Yeah.
just had so many great conversations with like founders and business owners over the years, and always had this in the back of my mind of like, man, I should just record these. And if it connects with just a few people and helps them, it's worth it.
Yeah.
So that's how all this sort of got started. And then when I started like really focusing on FamTech, that's when it got a little bit easier, like connecting with people, reaching out, and kind of getting this going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's probably a good segue, just to kind of jump into it. I know a little bit about you, a little bit about your company, and I got a whole bunch of questions and want to dig into it. But let's just start with you can just kind of give your kind of quick intro and just a quick kind of elevator pitch for Petunia.
Yeah. Well, my name's Greg Hearn, based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and Petunia helps busy families navigate senior living solutions. And we do that by accessing our platform as an employee benefit through your wellness benefits.
Yep. Awesome. And that is pretty different from, I think, where your career started, right? Your early kind of career years were in automotive, right? I mean, you had sort of a long career. I think some of it in tech, maybe some of it not. So what was kind of the career path, career journey? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I kind of think of my career so far as kind of split into two intersecting lines, or maybe more like a Twizzler. I don't know. But Petunia is actually my third venture. My first one was right out of business school way back in the early 2010s with a geolocation platform that we built for large scale events, which was pretty cool. So we were utilizing what was then kind of new tech with geolocation and QR codes and that sort of thing. And then my second one kind of blends more evenly into my quote unquote professional career in automotive. I joined a venture studio and we bought a couple of car dealerships and tried to figure out software and services for what are known as independent dealers. So those are folks that don't have like a Ford or a Toyota franchise associated with them, and ended up spitting out some interesting proofs of concepts and a couple of, at least one or two companies that one still survives today. And then, like I said, Petunia is my third venture. So I've got this sort of entrepreneurial streak that runs throughout my career. But you're right; it's been really, even pre-professionally, I've been a car guy my entire life, and fortunate enough that I got an early start cleaning cars and changing batteries and brakes and tires, and that carried me through some really cool experiences with Ford Motor Company, the auto dealership venture I just mentioned, and then into my sort of first product and tech role in earnest with Cox Automotive, which is the largest car brand most people have never heard of. So.
Yeah, and I'm always curious about this with founders, even like really early in your career. Did you have that entrepreneurial kind of itch? Was that something you thought about? Did you have? I'm always interested too. Did you have really quick, fast little things that you explored doing and then realized like, okay, that's not it. Most people I talk to have like 8 or 9 failed, not companies, but just ideas and maybe stuff they explored. But that's usually a sign of always having that bug, right?
Yeah, that's funny, actually. Somebody asked me recently if I could go back and change one thing about my sort of early career or earlier in my life. And my answer actually was that I wished I'd done more of the kind of experimenting and learning and failing earlier in life, because I feel like I would have gotten some bumps and hiccups out of the way later on in life with my subsequent ventures. But yeah, no, kind of like what you said, I've been surrounded by entrepreneurship my entire life. My parents, my grandparents, each had their own companies. And so, being nominally in charge of your own destiny is always something that's resonated with me.
Yeah.
It's something, it's just in you, especially when you grow up with it. So,
yeah. And sometimes, and I'm speaking from just personal experience, sometimes you aren't even all that aware that it's there, because I had in my family as well, people who went. My dad like worked in insurance his whole career, and then went out on his own and did consulting and got involved with some startups. And I was like pretty young, but I was seeing it and sort of aware of it. And then it wasn't until later, in my life when I was, 8, 9, 10 years into my career, I was just like, man, I don't know if this is, I don't know if this is for me to sort of keep climbing the ladder. And then that's when I like really started exploring pretty seriously, doing something of my own.
Sure.
And yeah, it takes a few tries to figure out what that is. But and then for some of your earlier ventures, did you have a sort of a team that you were working on, or is that more of a solo thing? What did that look like?
Yep. Yeah. So with my first venture, the geolocation events platform, I had two co-founders. And so we built it together, and we were really able to do the classic lean on each other's strengths and weaknesses play,
Yeah.
which was pretty cool. And second venture, I was surrounded by a team that, again, was, probably quite a bit smarter than me. And so I was glad to have them there. But, for now, for Petunia, I'm a team of one, which has been an interesting sort of, it's been an interesting place to be. I've also said this recently to people. I don't think this would have been possible. So much of this is so much faster, easier, and possible now than it was even probably 5 years ago, and certainly 10 years ago when I did my last venture.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that any of this is easy, but it's pretty amazing how
Mm-hmm.
far all of this has come. So
Yeah, and there's so many different things today, and it's not just AI, but it's like it's technology, it's just the way people work. I think
yep,
even in the last few years, like in my sort of professional story, the pivotal moment for me, it was sort of like the start of the new chapter was I was working on the agency side, and it was 2018, and I got laid off,
yep,
and that was back when it like getting laid off then is pretty different than now. And
oh
so
yeah,
I had, this was like right before the pandemic. So things were just so much different then. So it was in some ways a little scarier going out on my own at that time.
absolutely,
Um, but I can relate to everybody in the position they're in today. Like work is so different, work-life balance is different, working remotely, AI, like there's a million things
oh yeah,
that I think what you're saying is it makes a lot of stuff easier, but then again, it also presents a lot of other different challenges too that you
yep,
just have to figure out. So,
true
um,
story.
and then also when you're, I can relate to like I've been involved with a few startups, and each one has been sort of three co-founders, all with pretty complementary sort of skill sets and backgrounds, and that's pretty great because if you get one person kind of getting burnt out or feeling overwhelmed, you got two more people there to kind of pick up the slack a little
That's
bit.
right.
Even if two people are sort of like not feeling it, that one person can kind of just barely keep you guys going. But when you're on your own, it's a little different, right? It's a little bit of pressure, but sometimes a good
Definitely.
pressure, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's been a very unique experience so far. And some of that I think is the specific vertical or industry that I'm in. Certainly within sort of FamTech, AgeTech, but even like from a true vertical perspective of senior living and healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has definitely proven itself to be very much a people first business. It's a relationship business. And there's lots of verticals like that. In fact, automotive is very much like that as well. So maybe that's why I feel kind of at home. But it's made it a lot easier to, connect either virtually or in person, ask for help, ask for feedback, and I think that, that makes a world of difference when it's, you on the other side of a computer screen
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking to somebody, it was just yesterday about FamTech and care economy and AgeTech
mhm.
and all of the different things that kind of fit under the umbrella of FamTech. And they were just kind of asking me how I was going because it's really only been a few weeks or maybe a few months of me kind of going all in on trying to get plugged into the community and support, and kind of use my consulting business to specifically, support FamTech companies. And
Sure.
they were asking me how it's going, and I was like, it's honestly been great because of how, honestly, just how open all of the founders like in this category, how they end up being, and everybody's very warm and receptive, and
Yep.
helping with referrals and giving the 15 minutes to kind of talk and pick your brain. I mean, that's almost like that's like a dirty word if you say that to like a random person. Hey, can I pick your brain for 15 minutes?
Right.
And most of the time it's like, screw you, I'm unfollowing you on LinkedIn or whatever.
Hmm.
But everybody that I've come across so far in FamTech, it's been really great. So I'm
Yeah,
guessing that, like you said, that probably helped play a role in the really early days, right, of kind of getting
for sure.
started.
It does this week and today too. I mean,
Yeah,
it's certainly a constant. Yeah.
yeah. So let's kind of get into that kind of transition of
Sure.
the early days, or even right before founding the company. I was doing a little bit of research, and it sounds like many great businesses and many great founders, based on some personal experience and seeing an opportunity to you know uh, take something and make the experience better. It sounds like that's a little bit where the idea came from for you.
Definitely.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. You're right. Like a lot of people in this space, the idea sort of germinated from what I call learned and earned experience, and it's one of a couple really good reasons why for our sort of initial efforts here, Petunia's focused on assisted living and memory care and helping families through that discovery and decision making process. So it was about 3 or 4 years ago. My parents and my brother and I decided that assisted living was going to be the right choice for them. And so mostly my brother and I went through the process of, trying to figure out, really where the best one was, and kind of getting inculcated into this whole world of senior living, and specifically assisted living. And go figure, hadn't really thought too much about it before, and really didn't know very much about kind of questions to ask or what to look for, or red flags or any of that sort of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so we made the best decision that we could, and we moved mom and dad into a really nice assisted living, which was part of an independent living, assisted living, and memory care community up in Connecticut. And had the saltwater pool and the golf simulator and the craft room, and I mean, it was gorgeous. And then that's when we started learning where we kind of missed some questions, and could have looked at things a little deeper under the covers.
Yeah.
But we made do. And then my mom passed, and my dad actually is living with dementia, vascular dementia. And so I live in Atlanta, Georgia. My twin brother lives in Dallas, Texas, and my dad was by himself up in Connecticut. And we said, well,
Oh,
this isn't going to work for very long.
yeah.
And so we found ourselves for the second time going through the process of discovering, deciding, and selecting an assisted living with the intent of moving him to memory care when the time comes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just to make it even more complicated, we were doing it in between Texas and Georgia, looking
Mm-hmm.
at communities in both states
Mm.
to try to figure that out. But this time, at the very least, we knew what questions to ask, right? And kind of what the process entailed, and kind of how to steer our decision a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we moved my dad down here to Atlanta, and he's in a great community, which is fantastic, and we're doing great. But that experience, I was talking to another investor here in Atlanta about car stuff, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just kind of picking my brain, and I happened to mention that, I just moved my dad down here, and kind of walked him through the same sort of story. And I said, and gosh, you know, both times it was really like, it was a crappy experience. Like, somebody should fix this. and then carried on the conversation about the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite literally one of those moments out loud. Man, somebody should fix this.
Yeah.
And then I, promptly forgot about it for a few months, and it kind of just sat in the back of my brain. And then one day I finally did a little bit of research into sort of broadly healthcare, but senior living specifically, and started noticing some kind of signal in the noise, and got very, very curious about senior living and,
Mm-hmm.
and this problem space. And so then, because I'm a product guy, I did hopefully what most good product guys do. I went and talked to 40 odd families. I stuck my face up on LinkedIn with a, I think, fairly cringy video asking for people to get in touch with me and,
Yeah.
and talk to me about, their experience going through, finding assisted living or memory care. And it was through that we were able to sort of come up with some key insights. And through that's what informed our MVP and Petunia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of the story.
Yeah. What were some of the specific insights you remember kind of hearing from the
Yeah.
conversations?
So one, which I think, is, I wouldn't say it's like a total insight, but like, unless you maybe have thought about it a little bit or gone through it, you wouldn't recognize it. But there's kind of two camps writ large when it comes to assisted living. There's the mom or great gam's in the hospital and she's not safe to go home. Oh gosh, what do we do? Got to
Mm-hmm.
find somewhere safe,
Yeah.
right? And home's not going to be an option, right? So you have a pretty short, compressed timeline. The other one is, hey, did you see mom or great gam at Thanksgiving dinner? She's not really keeping up with stuff anymore. And did you notice there's stuff broken around the house and she forgot to go to the hair salon this week or whatever? Maybe we should start thinking about,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere that's maybe not home. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a much longer timeline, but, in both cases, right, you're coming to this conclusion that, something's not right and maybe home or aging in place is not possible. And you're in a place of duress. Right. And so right from the get go, this becomes a, highly emotional, sort of fraught, buyer's journey, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is what it is, right? It's a buyer's journey. Um, and Yeah, and from there, right, you start trying to pull the pieces together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I imagine talking to that many people, I mean, again, this is like one of those kind of no brainers. You probably knew this going into it, but the added maybe complexity of you have, children, siblings, family members that may not necessarily agree.
yep.
First of all, I'm guessing they might not even agree on what type of situation is needed. And then when you do narrow it down, the options of which one to go with I'm sure there's a lot of that emotion and disagreement involved there. Were you validating some of that, seeing some of that?
Yeah. I mean, kind of recognizing and holding space for the fact that that's there.
Yeah.
And that's, I am not smart enough nor qualified to begin to dive into family dynamics like that, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
recognizing that it's there, and so I guess kind of the broader insight that kind of comes from that sort of realm of conversation is, yes, there's usually multiple stakeholders,
Mm-hmm.
right, that are making a decision, and how do you keep all stakeholders in line, right, and informed and feeling like they're part of the process as much as they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the concept that it's, more often than not, it's at least somewhat of a team sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is important. um, Other side of the coin there is usually there's somebody that's driving the process. I mean,
Right.
just like at work, right? There's
Yep.
usually a project lead or a VP, or in our case, most often it's the, adult female child, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were unique in our family's version of it. We had, just two guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're usually the one that's driving the process and is, ultimately, you know, driving the decision forward.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. And then when you were coming out of that kind of quick, market research and coming up with kind of version one of the
Yeah.
idea, I imagine you probably thought a lot about making sure that what you were creating was more than just a directory of options, right? What was your way around like making sure that you went like deeper and solving the problem in like a different way? How did you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's an interesting place to dig in. So kind of just to back up a little bit,
Yep.
there's current state kind of a couple of different paths to finding assisted living or memory care. Um, One is you're going to work with, say, either a licensed social worker or a discharge nurse at a hospital or a senior living advisor, right? And those folks all have sort of local relationships
Mm-hmm.
in their particular market area, and they get paid a referral fee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll kind of help you through the process, and they've got some insights on questions to ask, and some may even have checklists or readiness sheets or that sort of thing. But that's common, and kind of backs up to those folks that are having to make a quicker decision. Right,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you'll encounter them. Then you have kind of the 800-pound gorilla, which is placeformom.com. And they dominate all the search listings.
Mm-hmm.
But turns out that they're a referral business as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you give them all of your information. They spit back a list of places, and then they do the kind favor of passing along your email, phone number, and address to anybody that's paid to be in their network or
Mm-hmm.
contracted to be in their network. Then
Yeah.
the phone starts ringing and the emails start going, and in some cases the text messages start going as well.
Yeah.
And so that's another common pathway. And then there's kind of two others. There's the directories sites, and this is actually where there's a number of folks that are doing interesting things in the space. But essentially, it's still a pay to play, whether it's a SaaS or subscription service or a referral fee. You don't show up, or you don't show up on the first page of these directories unless the community pays. And there's some level of sort of insight or knowledge or guidance that's available to you as kind of a free resource. And then the third or the fourth way really is Google, right? And that's really where kind of Petunia picks up. We're kind of betting on the hypothesis that the way that folks like you and I, plus or minus 10 years, maybe 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
are going to go on this buyer's journey looks an awful lot like buying appliances, buying a car,
Mm-hmm.
finding a house. And the first thing you're going to do is probably do a Google search.
Yeah.
And so you can do that, right? And that's where you'll encounter a place for mom, care.com, but then also the larger communities that have paid lots of money to show up on the search rankings. And all well and good. But like I said, that's where we kind of pick up. Our value prop is you're going to do that Google search, and chances are you're going to go, now what? Right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a process you've had to go through before, and you have to keep these stakeholders on board, and.
Mm-hmm.
And so we pick you up from that point of assisted living near me and help drive your family to the point of decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And because I think when I was doing some research, I caught, it might have been an interview that you gave or an article somewhere that I think you talked about what you just said. Like it's making very similar to making a really, really big purchase like a home or a car, equal amount of variables and choices and places
Yes,
where you could make a mistake. And sometimes those mistakes are not small mistakes. Like they have big, ramifications.
sure.
And all of this, I'm guessing too, like a much more emotional sort of buyer journey
Yep.
before, during, and after.
That's right.
than even a home or a car. So I can see the complexity of hindsight's always 2020. We're sitting here talking about it, and you spent all this time, but like you can kind of
Yeah.
see that there is that need for that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a decision you're making on behalf of somebody you love, right? And using their own funds or money. And so, yeah, that's a pretty big 1-2 punch if you
Hmm.
if you don't get it right, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, anything you can do in order to get yourself better informed, right, continues to reduce your risk and overall should help you make a more confident choice.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just think about the amount of time you spend on Zillow or Auto Trader or heck, even Amazon, right? Looking at reviews and
Hmm.
maybe going on Reddit and trying to educate yourself about something that you're going to buy. And yeah, it's no different here.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, am. I don't want to simplify this to just being a guy thing, but like buying something silly like a new pair of running headphones, like the amount of research I do just on that, and it's just a silly pair of headphones. There's no emotional, connection to that purchase, and if I buy the wrong one, it's not that big of a deal. So then, when it does come time to those really big, important decisions, yeah, it's even the stakes are obviously much much higher.
Right.
So
Yeah.
as oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So no, I was going to say, I mean, case in point, right? Silly or kind of well researched, sort of not life changing purchases.
Yeah.
They have companies out there that will help you select golf clubs or hunting
Hmm.
equipment, right? And it's like a co buying platform because you want that expertise, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, not totally crazy, right?
Hmm.
And it means people are out there doing it.
Hmm. Yeah. So you were coming to kind of this realization. You did kind of the market research. You saw the opportunity, sort of mapped out. Here are the different, purchase paths that people might take to get that information. Some good, some not good.
Yep.
Maybe the journey might be a little confusing for some people. What was like the very first, like step one to go start building it out, figuring out what the product or the service was going to look like? What was that, sort of day one thing of like, okay,
Yep.
let's start making it.
Yeah. And this is another one of those tiebacks to earlier in our conversation about how things are so much easier now than they ever used to be.
Yeah.
Combined, I guess, with having a few bites at the apple. I mean, this is for better or for worse, not my first time designing a piece of software, right?
Hmm.
So I've got the benefit of repetition and practice. But quite literally for me, I guess as a zennial, elder millennial, I did start with pen and paper.
Hmm.
And that was more, a function of I didn't have a huge whiteboard to work with or whatever, but
Yeah.
I actually kind of blocked out what I thought would be helpful. Quickly iterated that into a prototyping app, which again, thanks to the advances in the last 10 years, making near pixel perfect mockups really, really
Hmm.
simple and fast to do. And then it was about going back to some of those 40 odd families and saying, hey, what do you think? Do you think this would have helped you, right? And kind of going and doing that research. And then from there, I credit the time I was able to spend with a bunch of other startups with Techstars Atlanta
Hmm.
the last 6-7 years, because I'd been introduced to the concept of low code, no code, right, as a way to sort of rapidly prototype.
Hmm.
And as I dug around some other companies that I admired, I realized there was at least one or two of them that also started on Bubble, and that ended up being the platform that we went with
Hmm.
in order to get kind of speed to market and
Hmm.
and build something real, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And besides just kind of getting in your reps and having the experience from that community and some of the other ventures, what I mean, do you think back about like really specific things that you took away, maybe mistakes you made or lessons that you kind of learned maybe the hard way the first time around or two times around? Anything come to mind?
Yeah. So I come from sort of the school of thought of scope ruthlessly.
Hmm.
Uh, and I probably took an even sharper knife because wouldn't you know it, I was, using my own funds to build this thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And gosh, it sounds really silly to say out loud, but what we built initially was not even mobile responsive friendly. It
Hmm.
was I had made a what do you want to call it, a prediction, I guess,
Hmm.
that based on the type of interaction and activities that most of our users would automatically be using either a laptop or a desktop. So
Mm.
mobile wasn't needed right away.
Yeah.
Turns out that that's a really silly thing to do in 2025,
Yeah.
but I did it.
Yeah.
And so, that was a not minor speed bump because, although most things should be built to be mobile responsive, this was not. And, so it caused kind of stoppage and rework.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was a really silly thing to do.
Yeah. Um, and again, and maybe going back to some of the other ventures, where you also like had a team, so you had other kind of people to
Mm.
lean on, and um, lessons learned sort of shared, right,
Yep.
amongst the group. Because I'm a marketing guy, a branding guy, and not branding in like a design or creative way, but just the way that you talk about the company, the
Sure.
messaging, the positioning, like how are you connecting with people or not connecting with people is sort of my main area of kind of interest and expertise. So like thinking back to some of the other ventures, were there any kind of marketing things you learned along the way? Whether it was just kind of figuring it out as you go, or
Sure.
maybe like light bulb moments along the way where you're like, oh shoot, wish we knew that a year ago.
Um, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges in senior living, as I talk to operators, right, folks that run assisted living
Hmm.
and memory care, um, it's an issue that I share with them, which is I say assisted living, most people say nursing home,
Yeah.
right, and that is the context from which the vast majority of folks that encounter assisted living are starting from, it, and that's if you're lucky, right?
Hmm.
Because there's another camp of folks that don't even know that assisted living or memory care is even a thing,
Hmm.
right? They only know that there's either aging in place at home or
Hmm.
nursing home, and it's
Hmm.
it's almost binary, right?
Yeah.
So awareness and education is a ongoing battle for anyone in the senior living space
Hmm.
of any size.
Yeah.
And the same goes for Petunia as well,
Hmm.
right? Especially since we're focused on helping you discover and decide on assisted living.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that uh, is a challenge is coming up with sort of not just like content, right, for the sake of content, but like meaningful content as well as differentiated content, right?
Hmm.
Because you can go to any senior living provider or directory or lead gen, find the same 25 articles
Yeah.
on the same topics, right? And so how do you develop a meaningful content strategy with stuff that's going to resonate, right?
Hmm.
And that's not even thinking about this whole new world of um, you know marketing for artificial intelligence,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because that's, I'm sure better than I do. Really, it's game changing stuff
Oh
on
yeah.
how you think about marketing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And if there wasn't already enough of just like the same content everywhere, well, now with AI,
Slop.
there's
Yep.
times 10, times 100. I don't even know how much, just because the ability to just churn out mediocre, boring content that AI is, by definition, already going out to see what's already out there
Right.
to pull from and then create. So it's like this massive kind of feedback loop of just like this of sameness, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, I think you're right. Like how do you cut through that? How do you really make it valuable? There's that cliche of like add value
Right.
in marketing. It's like, okay, we say that all the time, but like when you really dig into what that means, I totally get that challenge. And I had a question about something you said, but real quick, you mentioned memory care a couple of times. What
Yeah.
does that mean specifically?
So memory care is often grouped with assisted living, but not necessarily always.
Mm-hmm.
But memory care is a usually a secured portion of a community or a secured community for folks that are living with things like Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, cognitive impairment.
I
Right.
see. Yep.
There are so not just it's not just a security thing, but then there are also sort of therapeutic approaches or uh, schools of thought and action that are out there in terms of how these communities are run, the types of activities they do, how they train the folks that work in these communities,
Mm-hmm.
both in terms of how to care for people with dementia or Alzheimer's, but also how to best interact with folks as they are progressing through through the stages of their dementia.
Mm-hmm. That makes
And
sense.
so, yeah, it's specialized and
Yeah.
secure,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes total sense. And then the question that I had for you, and I'm guessing this is one of those hard questions where you're like, hey, man, we're like still figuring it out. Um, you're talking about content marketing and education and overcoming that hump of you know, trying to first kind of do all that education before you even start to, try to convert somebody into using, the service in any way.
Sure.
And I'm guessing part of that is because, when you have aging parents, it's not really something you want to think about. It's not
Right.
something they want to think about. And it's, I think, kicking the can down the road, like literally as long as you can. I'm guessing that's a pretty normal thing.
Absolutely. Yep.
How do you, or how have you tried to figure out a way of maybe reaching people where it's not just like, oh my gosh, the last minute, now we need to kind of scramble and
Sure.
figure it out, and getting them open to thinking about it maybe a little bit ahead of time, which I'm guessing is very hard.
Yeah, it is, right. There's a lot of parallels to things like that are sort of we call it Venn diagramming, converging circles here in the death tech space,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about funeral planning as
Yeah.
well as like trusts and wills and estates and that sort of thing. We're all sort of facing that same I don't want to think about it until I have to
Yeah.
chasm, right?
Yep.
And that's on top of being able to afford it, right? As another set of issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of it's a nice segue to kind of talk about how we've evolved sort of our go to market strategy. And like I said at the very beginning, right, Petunia helps busy families discover and decide on senior living together via your wellness benefits, right? And so where we're trying to position ourselves is like your financial literacy or pet insurance or legal advice or fertility counseling, mental health, those types
Mm-hmm.
of wellness benefits that you already have at work. And in doing so, we're there once you kind of reach the conclusion that
Mm-hmm.
assisted living or memory care is something you want to look into, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same way that I'm not trying to out Google, right, by making a better listing directory of assisted living places, right?
Yeah.
we're also hoping to meet folks who are already sort of, on that path,
Mm-hmm.
and be there for them, uh, to help them make that decision. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a not perfect way to solve that problem,
Mm-hmm.
but I've got conviction that it's an efficient way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of our learning here as we continue to revamp our go to market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't until I think very recently I saw the term the sandwich generation.
Yeah,
And I was like, what is that? What is that? And then it sort of clicked. I'm like, okay, that makes total sense that you have, I think also, I think a lot of people having like kids probably later,
yep,
as time goes on, you find yourself in that position of like taking care of young kids and then taking care of aging parents.
that's absolutely true.
And it's something I think about a lot. I have two little kids, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and my parents are in their late 60s and early 70s, and they're doing great. But it's something
That's great.
it's something you have to that you have to think about. So it's like a unique kind of position to be in where you're juggling a
Yep.
lot. And so I'm guessing that's why I was saying there's not really maybe the perfect answer, but kind of meeting them on that journey when they find themselves, starting to get there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and that's part of why I see a path forward, both for assisted living, memory care, senior living, and hopefully Petunia as well, right? I mean, the the stat is we hit peak 65 in 2024 in the United States, meaning the largest group of people are turning 65. Which, for assisted living and memory care, for the record here, that is not the age that people typically enter it.
Yeah.
It's more like 80.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and in some circles 85, depending on what part of the country you're in. But to that other stat, yeah, last year the largest group of people turned 65, but then the first boomers did turn 80.
Mm-hmm.
And so that wave is coming. And then to your point, right, sandwich generation and people having kids later, like, yes, that's, at least if you believe the smart folks that come up with these numbers, right, like that
Mm-hmm.
it is a wave that is coming, and I think it's
Yeah.
going to change a lot about aging, and how generations care for each other. And yeah, it's going to be a pretty wild 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you mentioned this a little bit, and I think I also read this a little bit before we talked. That you're one of the things that you're kind of excited about is that B2B to C play of being a benefit that people can access, through work or through various channels.
Yep.
What was that something that you were kind of aware of, like from the get go, was going to be part of the path of how you kind of reached people? Was that something more recent? Where are you kind of at in like figuring out how to, bring
Yep.
that to market in that way?
Yeah. I strongly suspected that being B2C, right, was not going to be sustainable. I knew, however, that if I could use it to validate at least some of what I've built, right, and use it to validate the fact that people were, willing to spend money to make the pain go away, that
Mm-hmm.
that would give me some flexibility to kind of keep going,
Yeah.
right, and being sort of my own investor, right? Like it comes down to knowing when to cut ties with an idea, right? So I've
Mm-hmm.
taken kind of a very measured approach uh, with it, and so I'd say right from the get go, I knew B2C was not going to last very long, and kind of perked my ears up for different ways to get this in front of folks. Pretty early on, I started sort of circling around this idea of benefits,
Mm-hmm.
and then and we didn't fully pivot to kind of pursuing that strategy until May, June of this
Mm-hmm.
year. And the reason for that is as we covered earlier, I've spent most of my career in automotive and other ventures, and wouldn't you
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't know diddly about the benefits space. and so it was an effort of trying to learn how to walk this walk and talk a new talk, and that's ongoing today. But one of the things that was truly instrumental, and one of the reasons why you and I are talking today, is I happened to come across famtech.org.
Mm-hmm.
And they just happened to have their founder and residence, Lauren Dye from Cocoon, who went through a very similar journey with her company. And she was kind enough to put together a series of, essentially, this is benefits 101 to as a
Mm-hmm.
sales channel or as a go to market.
Mm-hmm.
So that benefited me, and I hope others that were able to attend those sessions greatly, and kind of was able to get us out in front and talking to the right stakeholders, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where we are now. Still on the journey, but getting ever closer, which is exciting.
Yeah. Um, and that's actually a good segue to a question I was going to ask about what have been some of the most helpful communities
Yep.
or tools or I mean we talked very briefly about like AI, like using
Mm.
AI to do XYZ more efficiently. But I guess specifically the community aspect of FamTech. Um, how else have you kind of benefited from that? Or some I'm guessing some probably great connections and
Oh yeah.
sounding boards and insights and I know a lot of events that they put on. I only recently became a member, and I think that's probably how I sort of came across you and your business. But
Yep.
what's kind of been the experience so far?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to shout out two communities Petunia is a
Mm-hmm.
part of. One, as I mentioned, is FamTech, and then the other one is AgeTech Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're both, fantastic communities. Obviously, AgeTech Atlanta is in the age tech space, and
Mm-hmm.
FamTech is in the family space, and we kind of straddle both,
Mm-hmm.
right? But yeah, I mean, in addition to that series by Lauren Dye, it has been, it's really two things. It's the ability to connect more easily with people because we're already in this association or group, and so people are more naturally willing to connect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then also just as kind of kitschy as it sounds, like it's that sense of community, right? Like um, and in the case of Age Tech Atlanta, I'm exceptionally fortunate that they happen to meet. Like I could literally walk 15 minutes and go to where they meet up here,
Oh wow, nice.
which is literally my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the case of FamTech, you know, the it's a community and people, and like when you're in my case a solo founder for now, right? Like just knowing that there's other people out there, whether you're engaging them for specific things or not, or even just a chat or not, there's something to being part of a community
Mm-hmm.
and building with a community that like it helps, and sometimes it makes not so great day just a little better because you can
Mm-hmm.
go on the Slack channel or go to an event, and you make that critical connection, you get that insight, you spark that idea, and yeah, it's just so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about this at the beginning, being a solo founder or even a founder on a small team can
Yep.
be a pretty, lonely thing because you're working a lot. And even when you're not working, it's even ideas running through your mind. And that's
Oh yeah.
kind of an exhausting thing. So I have found too, like working in those sort of networking communities and associations and meetups that um, from the outside people will kind of wonder like, well, it's not like you're finding a bunch of customers or clients or partners or anything like that, but it's more of the small drip of just that element of like, okay, I'm not on this island, I'm getting a little bit
Right.
of connection and insights and just that a little tiny bit of clarity on something you're working through
That's right.
is huge. So you gotta
Yeah.
have, you gotta have some place to get that right.
I'll say even just the ability to go in the case of particularly like a live event and go practice your elevator speech, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and actually doing that, and if you're able to iterating on one or two versions of it in the span of 10 minutes, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's all of it helps.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and no, so speaking of that, like elevator pitch, kind of working through, uh, messaging and
Mm,
positioning and clarity. When I first got started, doing kind of consulting work, that was a lot of what I really love doing, is like working with startups or really any kind of business, and just uh, sort of tinkering and it feels like you're in a laboratory figuring out the exact right way to say something that
sure.
is clear and there's no confusion. Is that the kind of stuff you like doing? Do you hate doing it? Does it feel like a chore? For most people, I think even if you hate it, sometimes when you do have the light bulb moment and you get a little bit of clarity, it's like, okay, I kind of like this now. Like, what's your relationship with all that stuff?
Yeah, I'd say on the most part, I like it. Right. There's definitely days where it annoys the what out of me. And I've, for better for worse, I've always been more of a um, words guy,
Hmm.
anyways,
Hmm.
than not. And so, the process of writing, whether it was something academic or even in business, was never something I like dreaded. I know a lot of people dread having to write stuff,
Yeah.
and I I always find it rewarding, like you were saying, to kind of keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it until it's like it's perfect. And you get that little jolt of awesomeness, right? When
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, I finally nailed it. I mean, and I do that all the time. I mean, as recently as this morning, filling out some questionnaires to go pitch at an event, right? Like, it gave me
Hmm.
another opportunity for the, I don't know, 80,000th time to say, what's our value proposition? And every time I tweak it, right? And take a few bites at the apple,
Hmm.
or it's an email, or it's, yeah, a cold email or something like
Hmm.
that. So, and yeah, I mean, I think you'd asked earlier as well around like tools and stuff like that. Of course, I'm using, Chat GPT, and actually
Hmm.
really like Claude, but I use probably Claude, Chat, and then Gemini in that order. But it also depends on what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And even with that, between the prompts and the outputs themselves, depending on what I'm doing, like, it's process of tightening and tweaking, and maybe that's why I kind of have embraced sort of the AI as a co-founder thing pretty
Hmm.
readily,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
there's quite a bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I tend to focus on more of like the writing and choosing the right words to connect with people, because that is such an immediate thing where you can have that light bulb moment of saying, okay, that's exactly what I'm trying to communicate. It's
right.
in a way that is in the language that's going to resonate with my audience. And so that's an immediate thing. But then the thing that's much more removed from that is all of the work on the website, all of the
Sure.
emails that you're sending, all of the content you're putting out there, all of the presentations, cold, like you said, the cold, outreach. Um, that can also be a long grinding, like kind of a drag of like executing,
Yep.
where you don't have the immediate signal of like, hey, this is working. But at some point, if you keep at it, you start to have people coming to you, and you don't necessarily even know how they found you, or where they
Yep.
where they came from. And that's the other sort of uplifting moment of like, oh, okay, so I think this is working. Now we'll figure out why it's working and how it's working and how do we do more of it.
Yep.
Do you get that kind of uh, I don't know, I don't want to say joy, but maybe it's joy of just like working through that and figuring it out? Or has there been a specific moment, I'll say this, where you just had a customer come to you, and everything seemed to kind of click, and it was the right customer? Maybe you had a conversation with them, maybe they just came through, and you're just like, okay, this is like starting to work a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the stage that we're at, I'm doing things that don't scale and hand to
Mm-hmm.
hand combat
Yep.
constantly, right?
Yep.
And so, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's been magical yet. But the bigger point, and you kind of touched on this, is sometimes you just got to get it done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and even if you're not getting signal back that it's working, or the result you anticipated, right? You you've got to send that, ask for an intro email. You've got to send that cold email. You've got to just write that blog post. You've got to just start building something, right? The difference between an entrepreneur and everyone else is they took that idea and actually did something about it. Doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to succeed, because we
Yeah.
all know what the failure rate for startups is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you do something,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Done is better than not done,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's a mantra that, even, I mean, I have to remind myself of that all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That good is better than not done,
Mm-hmm.
and just get out there and do it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's whether it's entrepreneurship or even just marketing. It's like football. It's like a game of inches, of yards.
Yep.
Yeah, touchdowns are what you want, and you want to win, but you're never going to get there without celebrating the tiny things that are working and figuring out what's working and not working. Uh, and so I find that true in marketing, but
Hmm.
also just being involved with startups here and there along the way. It's the same game basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll give you $1 for that. Why not?
yeah. And I could probably figure out a way to like just pick any sport and do some analogy that
Sure.
sort of fits, and I'll come up with a couple more and I'll just edit them in. How about that?
That works. I mean, inches and yards, though. I'm that one, that resonates. I got you on
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
Yeah. Never mind the
Um,
400-pound linebacker that's about to take you out.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Well, the other one I hear all the time is everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face,
Oh,
and
that's a good one.
you
Yep.
you can apply that to just about anything.
Yeah.
And and so you talked about this a little bit. The things that kind of get you the most excited today. You talked a lot about the kind of where things are going, just in sort of the industry and just sort of
Mm.
even outside of the industry. Obviously, a lot of things pointing towards there being a need for this type of a service. But what else do you kind of point to today that kind of gets you excited, and kind of looking forward to what's next?
Hmm. In or out of sort of senior living?
I guess either way, anything that sort of is related to the business that because again, whatever metaphor analogy we want to use, like it's a grind, and
Yeah.
you got to have that stuff that like the North Star keeps you excited, keeps you moving forward.
Sure.
Is there anything that you can kind of think of that keeps you going?
Yeah, I mean, so from an industry standpoint, right? It's really going to be exciting to see how aging evolves, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're going to be the longest, or I guess the boomers first, are going to be the longest running, largest, oldest group of folks, and assuming the newspapers are right, they hold the vast majority of the wealth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, from a aging perspective, I'm excited to see kind of like how they shake things up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because by all accounts, they're going to do it their own way, right? So I think that there's just going to be a raft of innovation,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's around um, care models, around you know mobility, around actual healthcare, around gosh, even just from a societal point of view, right? Like, are they going to change the way we think about aging, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's some stuff I've read that seems to indicate that that's already happening, right?
Yeah.
Just look at sort of our approach to seniors and technology, right?
Yeah.
they use it, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time just as proficiently as you and I do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of interesting, and then, with that kind of another click down into like senior living, you can feel the energy in this space. There's a lot of consternation about affordability, about the ability to build enough to accommodate this wave.
Mm-hmm.
But again, with that, I think there's really some opportunity for some really cool innovation. Layer on things like AI and God knows what else, right? As
Yeah.
sort of macro forces. But I think it's going to be really exciting to sort of at least be a fly on the wall for a lot of that stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean, I think that sort of engenders thoughts about like how it's going to look for us as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has been an interesting sort of place I found myself. I'm now, having spent over a year sort of day to day, knee deep, thinking about aging, longevity, senior living, right, and all these sort of interrelated topics. Thinking more about what I want, right,
Mm-hmm.
when God willing, I get to the age where I need some of that stuff. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you mentioned early on the golf simulator.
Yeah.
I could go for maybe one of those at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. The I only saw the simulator working maybe like one time I visited there, so
Yeah.
it was broken most of the time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
when in the context of your story, I'm guessing it was sort of the shiny object. Hey, look what we have, and it
Yep.
maybe was perhaps covering up some other flaws. I would say.
It's a marketing feature, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, all right. Well, last question I have for you is sort of um, so well, I don't know if it's a softball question, but it's just sort of the standard question that a lot of founders always get asked, which is, what advice would you have? Again, not your first rodeo. You've kind
Hmm.
of been involved in a couple different startups. What advice would you give to another founder? And actually, maybe in the context of like FamTech, AgeTech,
Hmm.
specifically that you would sort of impart to them. I mean, it's not obviously a lot we've talked about in our conversation where embedded in that is some advice, but what comes to mind?
The faster you can figure out who your customer is, the sooner you can go talk to more of them. Um, so to put that in context, you may think the customer is the parent when in fact it's the teacher or the provider, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or vice versa. Or it may mean that your customer is neither of those, but it's actually the CTO of X, whatever's in your space, right?
Mm-hmm.
In FamTech, and you'll start with a hypothesis on who your customer is. Be okay when it's wrong, um, and realize that you're not going to figure that out until you get in front of folks. I'd
Yeah.
say that's kind of uh, the big one. And then I'll go back to what I said just a few minutes ago. If you're not sure, figure out a way to start. There's a lot of stuff out there in the context of entrepreneurship about how to be successful. But you'll notice one of the things, two of the things that cross kind of every school of thought is get started, and then what can you do that is the smallest thing, right? That shows you're solving pain or providing value, right? So you might not have to build the low code, no code app. You could, put it together with spreadsheets and chewing gum, right? There's lots of ways to test ideas that don't involve, big development teams or even, quitting your corporate Carl gig. And you should run those down first. Um, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, both those are great. And as a marketing guy, that first one about figuring out your audience, it's so true, especially in FamTech. I've talked to several companies now that are have three, four different audiences, and they're the parents, the kids, the teachers, the other partners, organizations. There's businesses that you might go through to reach them, and it can be pretty complicated. And the tiniest little bit of complexity with messaging might
Hmm.
not seem like that big of a deal to you because you're inside of it and it's like pretty clear, but from
Too
the
close. Yeah.
outside it can be pretty confusing for people. So yeah, figuring that out is huge. And like you said, with all of it, you know if it's wrong, that's not bad. It's just
Nope.
you learn from it quick and you move on and you get on to the next thing. And more clarity is always a good thing. So
Yeah. True story.
awesome. Well, Greg, I appreciate it. Appreciate
Yeah.
you
Thanks, Dan.
joining me for this, kind of long form conversation. I love doing these and kind of digging in and kind of a lot of ways, just seeing where the conversation goes. But
Yeah.
hearing about your journey and your company, and hopefully we can share this out there and get some people aware of what you're doing and building. And just like you talked about with FamTech and AgeTech communities, you never know who's going to see these and connect with you because they have a question and you might be able to help
Sure.
them or vice versa. So really appreciate the time, and let's definitely stay in touch.
All right, Dan. Thanks so much. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
All right. Appreciate it, Greg.
All right. See ya.
Talk to you. Bye-bye.
Later.